Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today I am joined by author and podcaster Neil McRobert. You may know him as the voice behind Talking Scared, but you will know him as the author of Good Boy from Wild Hunt. And today we'll be talking about small town horror. So, welcome back.
Hello, yeah, I forgot, this is my third time, right? I thought it was my second, but we
Yeah.
did the whole meta horror thing as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, small town horror is where my heart really is.
We'll talk about that, but I feel like I see that come through in Good Boy. But
hmm
for those who have not been lucky, like me, to have already read it, can you tell our listeners a little bit about Good Boy?
I can, because it's got a really vague blurb, so I can be a bit more specific. So Good Boy is part of the Northern Weird Project from Wild Hunt, and it's 6 novellas, short novels, whatever, each celebrating a different region of the north of England and kind of celebrating its weirdness. And I picked where I live in Lancashire, in the Pennines, and the story is about a small town haunted by a ancient, well, you don't know how old it is, but it's been there a long time, and evil. So far so it's my attempt to kind of force it down into 130 pages. And the only thing that can stand against the only thing that can stand against this great evil is this very small, very brave dog called Riot, who is based entirely on my dog. It's pretty much like for like. Everything about that dog is my dog, including the dog on the cover is my actual dog that they put on the cover for me. And it's about basically this dog and his owner, and there are special things about the dog. He's not a normal dog, and it's about the life they spend together in this small town, trapped in this small town in a way, as the only thing that can stand against the evil. Yeah. And it's supposed to make you cry.
And that it did.
Good.
It didn't, okay, it didn't the first read through, but as I was going through again, prepping for this episode, reading that last chapter
hmm
really, really got me.
I mean, I will just say, because people who know me know that I do not like bad things happening to dogs. And I'm not saying there won't be sadness. I will say there is no cruelty. I think that's fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah. So.
But yeah, I can definitely see it influence in, I don't know, I think you do such a good job because it's a story within a story too. It's someone sitting down and saying like, well, let me explain what's going
hmm
on. Let me start at the beginning.
Yeah, which is my
Which you
favorite kind of
do.
story.
Exactly. And you do it so well. So it has that nostalgic tone that I also think King does. I don't know. I just felt like this was an ode to the Mike Hanlons,
The
the
Lighthouse
people that,
Keepers.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly
So
that. And
I'm
also, it's also inspired very much by John Langan and the way he
yeah.
kind of puts stories inside stories inside stories. So it's kind of I like to think, I mean, this is a bit bold to say, but I like to think that there's something of it, there's something of the fisherman, but in a very
Mhm.
English, dog loving way.
Oh yeah.
A bit laid barren, hopefully, that kind of weirdness. That's what I hope for. Yeah.
We are talking about small towns today. You said this was based on where you live now. Is that where you grew up, or is it what is your
Yeah,
locational history?
it's a bit of an awkward one, really, because my my mum still lives in the small town that I grew up in, and she's so proud of me. And she's coming to all the book events and stuff, and she's going to have to hear me sit on stage and excoriate and really put the boot into the town that I grew up in and where she still lives, because I don't have the greatest the greatest feelings about it. Yeah, it's that I live 10 miles from the town I grew up in, but the town I live in now is kind of the yin to my hometown's yang. Because I live in this kind of gentrified countryside village. It's still a little bit gritty. It's still nicely gritty, but it's nice, right? There are like posh coffee shops, and basically, I think you can judge it out on how much you have to pay for a coffee. And I like the coffee in my little town is ridiculous. Whereas the town I grew up in is like literally at the far end of this valley, so it's really far from anything, and it's just mired in this sense of like the 1950s. It feels like when you read about Derry, it feels like Derry then. And they're a great thing. I mean, it's a great, wonderful place to grow up because I had so much freedom and it's beautiful and it's countryside and I was never in the house. And I make a point in the book of talking about when this guy is looking back from his old age, saying that, like, when he was a young man, he didn't realize the limits. He didn't realize the negativity of the town because it was great when you were young. But then when you
Yeah.
grow up, you realize the limitations and the narrow horizons and a phrase I keep using in interviews, but like the complacent prejudice. The people in my hometown are not bad people, but there is a complacency to the attitude towards the world, which I think is problematic in our current moment, shall we say. Um,
Yeah.
but not to be too over the top. I mean, there's good and bad in every town, right? It's just that town where I grew up in is a very particular, peculiar place.
I could see that. I don't know. I as an American also feel
Mm-hmm.
conflicted with the small town aesthetic and the way
Mm-hmm.
we tend to romanticize small towns. I mean, it's fall, it's Gilmore Girls season. Everyone is watching Gilmore Girls again and wishes they could live in the walkable community that is Stars Hollow.
Yeah.
But, I have conservative family members that live in small towns, and there's something about the way that they view people that don't live in small towns where I really feel like they see us as less American than we are.
Right, okay. Yeah, I don't think we have that. We just have I don't think our particular brand of bigotry is quite so strident. That's why I use the word complacent. It's more just not really considering other people's point of view or being,
No.
here's the thing that gets me down. And again, this is not just about my town, it's all small towns, but and it's this is a big thing in the book. This sense that if you want more than what that town can provide, you are in some way, I don't know, getting above your station, or you have no right to want more, that it makes you in some way like a snob,
Like, you
and
think you're better than us.
yeah, and that's a particular, like, the incurious mindset bothers me. And I
Yeah.
try to talk about that in the book, basically, by asking what would make somebody stay in that environment.
And I think you have some characters that really embody that. The negative aspects of that
Yeah,
character.
yeah. I will just say, you know the
Um,
thing with the car, with the
yes.
bad, yeah, that my dad did that. Yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah,
Did he
yeah.
ever get caught or
No,
anything?
no, no,
No.
no,
Right on.
no. But that's the kind of thing he would do.
I love that. Way to honor his legacy.
Yeah, yeah.
Immor- Immortalize him. I mean, I feel like, yeah, just horror in general loves a small town, but it is interesting to see the way, like, we have like British small town horror and American small town horror. Because I feel like British small town horror is always a little ancient evil folk horror.
Right. So we'll get to it with my picks today, but my picks have a lot to say about that. Actually, I tend to think of small town folk horror as being more of an American thing. Because I think of like Children of the Corn and stuff like that, or the Indian burial ground, problematic trope, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas in Britain, I think of the folk horror as like the real rural stuff, not the small. It's
Mm.
like the tiny hamlet of three houses and a vicarage and stuff, and the fields. But I suppose you are right. Yeah, it's just, I suppose it's what is a small town. I suppose,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, but we're there's much more. I think of, again, also it means it's geographically, where is it? Because if you get out in Iowa, I think somewhere like, or you get into like Cloud in the Cornfield, I think that feels quite like British folk horror in its
Yeah.
way. Whereas a small town in Louisiana, so we've got a whole different kind of vibe. I think it depends where you are. Whereas in the UK, it's quite a bit more of a monoculture, at least in fiction. You've got small towns, you've got farms, you've got fields, and they're all haunted by ancient green shit.
Yeah. And we have the rituals and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at my picks and I kind of thought about how, well, and my movie picks, that a lot of the small town horror that I'm into is about either like a small town trying to hide like a series of tragedies that have always happened,
Mm.
or there is a tragedy that happens that the town is dealing with and really brings down this picture perfect image of safety and stability.
Yes. I think in America, what you get a lot is this kind of. I think that geographically, you tend to have a primal horror that's regional, and in
Hmm.
in the West, it would be the American Indian genocide, generally speaking, or maybe sometimes you get the whole logging industry and the deforestation, and then in the Northeast you get witches, witches everywhere. And then in the South, obviously, you get the absolute primal horror of slavery, and it seems to be quite a lot of. Or in America, it's a lot about like the human horror of what was done there before we built our nice white picket fences towns. Whereas in
Yeah.
Britain, it tends to be much more to do with sort of like an evil in the ground that predates humanity. I mean, I'm massively generalizing here, but I think because we've got so much history, what do you
Yeah.
pick? As it
Yeah.
tends to be like either there was a battle there once, or it's something that has been there for millennia and like predates us, and I don't know which I think I like that more.
The British one?
Well, just the old evil, because I like the idea that we are just like visitors to this place and that we're almost
Yeah.
irrelevant, and that's quite a cool little thing. When that erupts in a small town and just like everyone has a bad weekend, I think it's quite good fun.
Well, before we get into movies and shows, I think we need to talk about the master of small town horror, big
Yes,
man himself.
indeed. Yeah, yeah. I was really trying to think of someone's name to like make a joke out of that, to like really deflate it. But you mean Stephen King? I was trying to think of some other writer I could go. Yeah, you're right. Clay McLeod Chapman. Um, yeah,
Well,
Stephen King. Small towns. Do you have a favorite?
I think it would be it. Needful Things
Yeah.
is up there too. I do love that. Um, this is very random, but when my husband and I first got married, I was talking to him about the movie The Perfect Storm, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, we rented that." And I said, "Yeah, the one with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg, where they're like fishermen and the cover." And he's like, "No, no, that's the one about the small town where there's like a devil person and he's like turning people against each other." And we did not agree on this. I'm like, "No, it's not. The Perfect Storm is a movie about fishermen." And it wasn't until years later that I ran across Storm of the Century. And I was like, "This is
Oh,
the movie you were talking. This is the miniseries movie you were talking about."
yes. Yeah, God, I forgot about it. I mean, I love Storm of the Century. That is such a good story. Kind of wish it was a novel as well as the TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good and so dark. But I love Needful Things. I mean, obviously I love it. I love it,
Yeah.
and that town lives and breathes. And I love Needful Things, and I love Under the Dome. And I spent 2.5 hours last night talking to Nat Cassidy and Chris Panettiere about Salem's Lot for our ongoing King deep dive stuff. And there are
Ah,
many others. Obviously, Castle Rock, is just like this icon of horror. Um, but he's just so good at it. And I haven't picked any King books for my picks because it's boring, because like he needs the promotion. Um, but there is no one else really who does it quite as well.
no, there isn't. It was my first Stephen King book. And I could not believe how riveted I was for
Mm,
over 1,000 pages, even the, little side stories about what's happening to other people in the town. Even the stuff that's going on in the newspaper
mm,
articles.
yeah,
That was me getting back into reading, and it was something I thought I wouldn't gel with. And I am reading about, explosions happening during Easter egg hunts and
yeah.
children's limbs being found in trees. And
Mm. Yeah, I think he must. It's just the most fun feeling. Like I love all those interludes and like you find out this bit
yeah,
of. I love it. There's. I think this is the thing about small towns. Despite how horrible some of the horror is, they're such comforting. I don't know why but they're cozy, comforting stories.
I mean, there's that whole cozy murder mystery genre that is just small towns.
Mm.
And I mean that you got the British cozy mystery small town too. I mean, we it's just there
I mean,
is
oh yeah,
something about that setting, even
we
when
have a
it's
show
murder.
over here called Midsummer Murders, and Midsummer is a town, and it's been going so long that there should be no one left in that town, because every week someone, like I've always said about Murder She Wrote, why is no one investigating Angela Lansbury? Because she's at the scene of every crime, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with Midsummer. Like, why have the government not descended upon this town and investigated like the 400 murders in 4 years, you know. But there is something just so comforting about the way King does it in particular. Some of my picks today are not comforting. Some are. But when I read a King book set in a small town, it does not matter how horrible the horror is. I just feel like, oh, okay, this is like a nice warm bath of a book.
Yeah. There's something about that. He
Yeah.
just really colors it in.
Yeah.
All the small little interactions and side characters, and I don't know, every character's voice just feels so lived in.
Mm. And the other person as well is Peter Straub, but did it in Ghost Story, which is as good a rendition of a small town as any. You know, there's something about those like 70s and 80s small town horrors that I just love.
Well, should we talk about some movies and shows that
Mm-hmm.
get into some small town horror? I had to mention Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
And since you're in your Salem's Lot era, that seems like a good comparison.
Are you a fan?
I was. Were you not? You're
It's my favorite horror
okay.
TV ever made.
Really?
I
So of
think
all the
it's
Flanagans, it's your top, and then it's top above.
easily my top Flanagan, and nothing has ever beat it. Like, I mean, obviously, what is horror TV gets a bit weird, right? You know, is the X-Files horror? But regardless, in terms of like this new era of horror TV, Midnight Mass is like the creme for me. I think it's the best. It's one of the best Stephen King adaptations ever. I mean, even though King didn't write it, he may as well have done, right? I love it so much.
I do too. There's something about, yeah, everything that everyone is going through and all the scenes in the church, all the
Hmm.
monologues. I loved everything. And I was
Yeah.
in the middle of my religious deconstruction when that came out. So I think all these musings on like what happens to us when we die, what is
Yeah.
eternity, what do
Yeah.
we owe each other,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And
really.
the only thing better than a small town is a small town on an island,
Yeah.
you know, because I went to Martha's Vineyard years ago when I was doing my American road trip, and I went to Martha's Vineyard, and it's lived in my imagination ever since. It's like or Nantucket or any of them, those East Coast like small town island communities that King again writes about so well. Um, they're so atmospheric, and they're so closed off, and they're so insular and unique. And I think
Yeah.
they had the perfect horror setting.
Another one I thought of was 30 Days of Night. Did you ever watch
Weirdly,
or read it?
I've never read it. I'm so ignorant when it comes to like comic books and graphic novels. But I watched it again about a month ago and really liked it because I saw it in the cinema when it first came out. What must be at least 20 years ago now, right? And I
Mhm.
hated it, really hated it, and I don't know why I hated it. Um, and then obviously it's got this like kind of cult following ever since. I was like, have I missed something? Because I often do. Um, and watched it again, and it's great. I don't know what I was thinking first time round. I think it's great fun. I mean, it's not scary, but I think it's great fun.
I had a lot of fun with it. And I mean the isolated small town is a huge part of the plot. I mean, it's
Mm.
this town in, I think it's Barrow, Alaska, that is so far up north that they have 30 full days where the sun does not come up, and they are going to be there is a group of vampires that is planning to descend upon this community and wipe them out. So it's, an external enemy and the town banding together to keep each other alive. And then you have the romantic drama of Josh Hartnett and his wife.
I saw
And
something in your eyes change then, Stephanie, when you said Josh Hartnett. You're a girl of a certain generation. I could tell that there was feelings there.
millennial through and through.
Yeah.
Listen, that's what got us to the theaters. Um, and I will say in the art direction for that, the creature design for the vampires is spot on from the
Mm.
comics.
I love Danny Houston, who plays like the chief vampire as well. I think he's great in everything,
Yeah.
and he's kind of bestial and animalistic, and I like that kind of vampire. I'm not into vampires in cloaks. I like the ones that are a bit more animalistic. Yes, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed watching it. I really did. I should probably read the graphic novels, but I won't because I don't have the time. But
If I can say, I preferred the movie
okay,
to the
okay,
graphic novels,
yeah,
so it's
yeah.
okay.
Mm.
Um, I wanted to mention my love, Twin Peaks. Did you ever venture in the Twin Peaks waters?
I, 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 There are certain
Do you
things that I'm really ashamed to admit, right? I've never seen Twin Peaks. I've never
Okay.
seen a single episode of Buffy.
I
And
haven't seen Buffy
oh,
either.
that surprised me. It feels like
I know.
you are like when they were making it and there was a committee, it felt like they had you on a blackboard. They were like, make it for this person.
I know.
Yeah, but no, I've never seen Twin Peaks, and it feels. I mean, I was perhaps ever so slightly too young when it first came out, um, but I've never really got on with David Lynch. I think as a person, I think he's wonderful. Massive fan of the man, God bless him. Now he's
Hmm.
gone. Um, but I never particularly loved his films because I'm not really into like surrealism. It always makes me feel dumb, like I'm not getting what I'm supposed to get from it. I think it's because
Yeah.
I'm not very good at just kind of like giving myself over to something, just being like, okay, this is weird. Let's not question it. I question everything, and then when there isn't an answer, I'm like, am I stupid? Have I missed something? Um, so I tried with Twin Peaks, but the more I read about things like log ladies and stuff like that, I was like, this is probably not for me. But it should be because it's pure Americana. I'm really into that stuff. I love a diner, Stephanie. Um,
Yeah.
and I think Bob and that scene with over the couch is really scary and stuff. But I think it's one of those now where I know so much about it that there's kind of no point me going watching it.
I could see that. My husband is the same way. He has no patience for
Yeah,
my weird surreal stuff that doesn't make sense. Where I'm like, it's okay. You just got to like go through it. And he's like, but doesn't make sense. Um yeah, especially the first season, I would say plays out like, one of my favorite genres, like the crime story miniseries in a small town where everyone's
hmm
a suspect and there's a girl that's been murdered. Like
hmm
I love every iteration of that. I love the killing. I loved Broadchurch wasn't a girl, but like I love that like
yeah,
we're following a crime throughout. And then yes, the second season, the mystery gets solved like halfway through and then we get like very Lynchian in the red room and
yeah, yeah,
really experimental and it goes off the rails a bit, but it's
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, and then it came back, and they were like giant men lumberjacks and like nuclear bombs, and I don't know. It's probably not for me.
And that's fine. I also had the Sharp Objects mini series on here because that I think has been one of my favorite mini series adaptations from book to screen.
I've read the book, Gillian Flynn, right?
Hmm.
I've read the book, and really, I like that book more than Gone Girl. I think it's my
Yeah.
favorite of hers, but I haven't seen the adaptation. Was it Amy Adams?
Yeah, it was Amy Adams and Eliza Scanlon and Patricia. I'm forgetting her name, but as the mom. And it was so good.
Really? Because I think my
Yeah.
wife would like that. I might watch that with her.
But that's like, a journalist going back to her small town because there's been a string of girls being murdered and she has to stay with her family and that's a toxic situation and so she has to face a lot of things from her childhood and
Hmm
it's dark.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
performances are so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made you saying that made me think of. Did you watch the TV show Sinner with Bill Pullman?
No.
It's on Netflix. It's that's very similar. You'd love that. As it goes, there's two, and I think there's two or three series, and it's not really worth bothering. But the first series is Jessica Biel,
Hmm.
who was killed. She just goes. She's one day she just goes feral and kills this guy who she sees, and she doesn't know why she's done it. It's like a Pavlovian response that she has.
Hmm.
And the reason is like rooted in like her adolescence in this small town and her sister, and Bill Pullman arrives as this detective and starts to unravel the mystery. And it's a really, really interesting story because it's not a typical crime drama. It's got a stranger reveal than that. I loved it. And it sounds very
Yeah.
similar to the kind of thing you've been enjoying. So I would. It's on Netflix still. I would definitely watch season
Okay.
one. Yeah.
Okay. I will add it to the list.
hmm Yeah, so I've got some that are perhaps a bit obscure to your American audience. I never quite know what makes the leap across the Atlantic. Um, Keeping with the idea of like, the killing and Broadchurch and stuff like that, there's a show that came out to incredible acclaim, and it's called Happy Valley, and it was on the BBC, and it's basically set about 10 miles from my house, and it's named, it's not like it's not taken and made into a different place. It literally is like this small Yorkshire town, and it's like a police procedural where this an actress called Sarah Lancashire, who's very very famous in the UK for playing a role in a soap back in the 90s, but she's gone on to be this kind of national treasure. She plays this very, very pragmatic, down to earth female sergeant who just has she's exhausted, right? It's not like this, it's not like an American cop, or it's not Mayor of Easttown. This woman's just kind of like a really realistic, just tired, middle-aged woman who cannot be bothered, but she's got to solve this crime. But what's brilliant over the three series is it starts with like there is a crime to solve, but it becomes much more an ensemble cast and story about the web of intrigue and corruption and secrets in this small town, a lot of which have no relation to the main plot, but there's just a lot going on.
Oh,
And
I love that.
it's
That
it's
sounds very Twin Peaks.
it's excellent. And I always wonder if non-British people watch it, would the regional specificity make it difficult? Because I never know how that works the other way. Because obviously your culture is so we're bathed in it, we can pass it out. I often wonder, does it go the same way as well? But give it a go, people. Happy Valley. It's probably my favourite ever of the small town crime dramas.
Okay. I feel like I've definitely seen the thumbnail for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and it's very
So,
gothic. It's lots of
okay.
moorland, and it's set like where the Brontes lived and stuff, and it's very modern gothic and very funny, and I loved it so much. The other one to mention, this is completely like left field in many ways. There is a TV show from the 90s called The League of Gentlemen, not The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, The League of Gentlemen. Have you heard of the TV show Inside Number 9?
Yes.
So, the two guys who write and act in Inside Number 9, they were originally part of a trio with Mark Gatiss, the actor from Sherlock and things like that. And they made this sketch show in the 90s about this small town called Royston Vasey. And Royston Vasey is literally based upon the small town that I grew up in, that Good Boy is based on.
Wow.
Because they wanted to make this uber gothic comedy about horror comedy about this small town, and they decided to do like reconnaissance around the area, and they got to my town and went, if it's this weird here, we're not going any further. So you've got like, it's a sketch show in terms of like you've got recurrent characters, but there is a story, and it's things like there's the famous characters of these two people who live in a house on the hill and have a shop, and they're an incestuous brother and sister, and the catchphrase is, this is a local shop for local people. And if people to who aren't local, they do awful things to them, and they've got like a deformed son in the attic. And the butcher is selling this thing. You never find out what it is, but he calls it special stuff, and it gives people nosebleeds. And there's theories that it's like cannibalism or all manner of stuff. And there's like a guy who's obsessed by frogs, and his house is full of frogs. And it's a vampire teacher who like is obsessed with this like teenage boy and like is desperate to like have sex. It's so dark and so funny, and probably by today's standards so near the edge on what's acceptable. And these three actors play all the characters, and it's so close to like everyone in my generation's heart. And they based it on and they filmed the third series in my small town. You'll find it on some streaming service. It's unbelievably of it. It's just, you have to see it.
Okay. That sounds so funny.
Yeah, it really
Them
is.
playing Them playing everything reminds
Mhm.
me of Portlandia. Did you ever watch?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that yes, exactly. Oh god, it's so good. The League of Gentlemen. Please, people, go and find it and watch it because wow, yeah, it's unbelievable what they get away with.
Well, should we get to talking about our picks?
We definitely should, yeah, yeah. Because I've got four, which we can narrow down to three if you like. It's entirely what you want me to do.
Okay. Since you have four, how about you go first? Because I think I only
Okay.
have three.
Right. So first of all, I thought I'd go with a classic because I talked about how the '70s was a great time for small town American horror, and we talked about Straub and King, and the one that always gets forgotten is a book called Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon. Have you read this?
I have. This is the one I was talking about. This is one of my favorites.
Excellent. Okay. I read this when I was much younger, and I was shocked by how dark it gets from how cozy it starts, right? So Thomas Tryon, weirdly, was like an actor who just turned his hand to writing horror fiction. He also wrote The Other about like the evil brother twin situation, um, which is probably better known than Harvest Home, but I think Harvest Home is the better book. It's basically like the uber folk horror. And when you ask me the question about, folk horror in Britain or the UK, I think this book is set in America, but feels in some ways very British. I mean, the small town
It
is
does.
called Cornwall Coombe, which sounds like a town from the southwest of England. Um, and this family called the Constantines move to Cornwall Coombe. It's that traditional thing, they want to get out of the city and get a nice life, and they move there. And there's this it's very Salem's Lot. It's very like you go around. There's this roster of characters and like the different people of different echelons in society, and there's a sense of something happening under the surface, and there's a real gender. I can't spoil too much because there's such a cool like reveal, but there's a real sort of gender thread running throughout it. Gender's clearly an issue in a way that feels really contemporary, and there's a sort of matriarchal cult thing going on, which again feels really interesting for the '70s, when a time when there weren't many matriarchal societies knocking around that were written by men for a start. And the Constantine family moved there, and there's a corn maiden, there's a harvest lord, an awful lot of stuff about the cornfields and the harvest, and they make friends with this professor called Robert who has turned blind since he moved to Cornwall Coombe. He moved there because his wife was from there, and I mean, you know what it's like, Stephanie. I can't say too much more about this, but it's so atmospheric. It's such like an incredible slow burn, and it feels uber cozy. And then right at the end, you get this sort of bacchanalia of sex and murder. And it's got like this insanely dark ending that the epilogue is like, whoa, I was just not prepared for where it went. And like, if you've watched the film Society and you think, my God, that ending came from nowhere, this kind of has a similar feel. There's no shunting. It's much more sort of like normal than that. But similar leap from Perfect Little Town to, whoa, what the hell happened? And it's just like kind of like thrillingly nasty. And I was reading about it, and there's a great quote on Wikipedia that made me laugh because Stephen King said in a review at the time, because Salem's Lot came out the year after, and so they asked him about it. And King said, back in his snarky days, he said, it isn't a great book, not a great horror novel, not even a great suspense novel, but it is a true book, an honest book. And then he says this, I think is so ironic. He said, it does have this going for it. In 40 years, when most of us are forgotten, there'll still be a routine rebinding once a year for the library copies of Harvest Home. So he thought this one would stand the test of time, and weirdly, it's the one that hasn't.
Yeah. It is odd. No, you are spot on about it being cozy because I remember when I was reading this, feeling very charmed by this small
Mm-hmm.
town. I'm like, I know I'm reading a horror novel, right?
Yeah.
There's like a skeletal figure on the front. Like,
Yeah.
sure. Um, but being very charmed by all the like little farmers markets, going out to the main street, meeting with all the
Yeah.
locals. I'm like, I don't know, I kind of get the appeal of Cornwall Combe.
it's very modern day bougie. You know what I mean? People would
Yeah.
flock there these days.
And then you're right. You get to the ending and you're like, "Oh my god." And it got to a point where I was like, I can piece together what's happening. There's
Hmm.
like festivals coming up. We're choosing people for these things. Like I think I've seen this film before, but it goes further than you think.
Yeah, it kind of out Wickerman's the Wicker Man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's very Wicker Man, but it
It's like
goes
New
beyond that.
England Wicker Man.
Yeah, it's I remember reading it, being like, this is an unexpected gem. Yeah, I really really liked it. So that's where my mind went right away when you asked me about small town horror.
We love it. Where would you rate it?
What are your give me your categories again?
It's room temperature, fridge, freezer.
Yeah, I would say it's room temperature for like 5/6 of the book, and then absolute freezer for the last chapter and epilogue.
I would agree with that. Okay. My first pick is the graphic novel The Lolo Woods by Carmen Maria Machado and Danny. Have you read this one?
I haven't, no.
So this is set in Shudder to Think, Pennsylvania, where we follow two girls who wake up in a theater and they have no memory of how they got there, what's happened to them. They can't recall the last few hours. And they both agree this is weird and something they want to look into. And as they start doing their investigation, they're high school girls, they realize that this is an epidemic among women and shudder to think that they just have these bouts where they lose time. There's just time that is unaccounted for. And shudder to think used to be a coal mining town and is essentially always on fire. And I don't know if you're familiar with the fire in Centralia, PA.
Yeah, yeah. I'm fascinated by it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's based on it's based definitely based on that town. But they begin to investigate and uncover the evils and supernatural things going on. Like they meet one of the town witches who, when she appears, she takes the form of a toddler, of like a
Oh,
a 4-year-old girl, but she is just this witch who knows the history of the town and knows exactly what they're there for. And it's creepy even in the graphic novel, just seeing it visually. You're like, ugh.
yeah, yeah.
But it is about what these girls do to essentially face down generational trauma and coming to terms with what the generations of, in this case, women have done before you to make it through, and getting to a point where you're like, is making it through enough? Like, we need to just end this. We need to find our way out of it. We need to be the ones that break this cycle
Hmm.
in this small town and really confront the evil that's been plaguing us for generations. So I really liked it. It's a graphic novel I think about often. So that is The Low Low Woods by Carmen Maria Machado. And
I'm a big fan of Carmen. I think she's brilliant in everything she does. So that I didn't know she'd done a graphic novel, but that sounds fascinating.
yeah,
And I do love the Centralia fire thing.
I would put this in the fridge.
Scary moments, but not too many. Not going to horrify me then. My
Fridge.
next one is I'm sort of loath to recommend this because I'm not sure it's a great book, but it's very close to my heart when I read it as a teenager, and I want to give the author some love. So James Herbert, who wrote famously, The Rats, yeah,
Hmm.
in many ways the most procedural and workmanlike of horror writers. We always called him Britain's answer to Stephen King, but he's much. I mean, he's dead now, but he was much more workmanlike than that. He tended to have like one good idea, and then his books would all kind of feel the same with how he dealt with it. But he wrote a book in 1994 called The Ghosts of Sleath. That, like I say, if anyone's read this recently and it's not great, I apologize, but I remember it being just really effective. And the it's actually a sort of sequel in because Herbert wrote 3 books featuring this character called David Ash, who's a sort of Mulder-like parapsychologist, more a Scully-like actually, because he's a bit of a skeptic. And in the first book is called Haunted, and they made a great movie of it in the 90s. And that's a very gothic haunted house novel with a phenomenal twist, kind of a gothic romance. And then he then wrote this second book, Ghosts of Sleath, where David Ash is traumatized by what's happened in Haunted, and recommences his parapsychology studies, reluctantly. But there's not really any link between them apart from that character. So you can read this as a standalone. But essentially, he is brought to investigate not a haunted house, but a whole haunted village, the village of Sleath. And I love how creepy that. I mean, he's got that word really well, Sleath. It sounds like a grim place, right? Now, when Herbert wrote horror novels, what he tended to do was just have a lot of different plot strands happening at the same time that roughly coalesced into a novel. They often feel a lot more like individual set pieces strung together as a novel. But that really works in The Ghost of Sleath because it's about, this house, this is happening, this house, this is happening. The central idea is that everyone is being haunted by someone from their lives, and the ghosts have come back evil and are actually like scaring people to death. And David Ash has to work out why. And there's this typical stuff with like there's a haunted manor on the hill, like I think it's called Lockwood Manor, and that there's a curse and like an age old thing going on, and that is why all these ghosts are like knocking around. But some of the individual like happenings are so horrible. Like this, I remember the two I remember vividly is there's a young woman whose child has died, and every day in the middle of the day, in the middle of the afternoon when she's like watching daytime TV, she'll hear her child walk down the stairs and come into the room like clockwork, and it's just so creepy that she's sat there in the daylight waiting for this child. And the one that is like just so 90s horror in its unnecessary grimness is that there's like this a ghost of a dead child molester returns every night to haunt his son. And it's just like, oh really, James, did you have to put that in the book, so it reads like these great individual set pieces that coalesce into this creepy novel about a haunted village. And I think it's never been confirmed, but I think it's actually based upon a village called Pluckley in Kent, which is at last count the most haunted village in the world. There's something like 16 or 17 recognized hauntings in this town. Literally every house is haunted in this town. And I think the book is based on that. But yeah, The Ghost of Sleath. When I read it, probably aged about 15, it would have been like Freezer. I imagine now it's somewhat decayed or thawed out to being Fridge. But yeah, if anyone's read it recently, let me know what you think, because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how it
Yeah,
holds up for a modern reader. Okay, my next pick is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare,
excellent.
young adult slasher. And this is about Quinn and her father who are moving to Kettle Springs, Missouri from Philadelphia for a fresh start. And I also wanted to say, I feel like a lot of the legacy of small towns and small town fiction in America is that most small towns are dying, like young people are not staying in them and they don't have the industries to keep them economically
Mm-hmm.
viable like they used to. So, which is also the case in Kettle Springs when they lost the Bay Pen corn syrup factory, which has left the town divided. The Bay Pen corn syrup factory, of course, had a mascot named Friendo the Clown, and a bunch of teens are being hunted by friendos all around. I really liked that this book got into the generational divide that I feel here and that I definitely felt in church growing
Mm-hmm.
up, where we just have to blame the youth for everything going wrong. Which is also what I loved about Good Boy is Riot, showing up every day. You have an older protagonist just doing the work, showing up every day out of duty for the young people.
Mm-hmm. He's a good boy, that dog. He's a good boy.
He
Yeah.
is. Don't make me cry. As you know, I'm a slasher person through and through, and I thought this small town with this division among its residents and resentment just brewing, and people just placing blame where it doesn't belong, uh, culminating in this massacre and fight for your life
Hmm.
was a good vehicle to explore this. And I really love the entirety of the series as it goes on. I loved all the Clown in the Cornfield books as we explore even different nuances within characters and journeys. And it's good. Adam Caesar knows what he's doing.
I read all three of them in one
Yeah.
go because he was coming on the show, and I was really worried about that they wouldn't be good because I had so much to read, and I love them. And I think I've gone on record as saying I think Clown in the Cornfield is in its own way as revolutionary as Stephen Graham Jones' J. Daniels trilogy. And I love how it handles the politics of generational kind of divide and the metropolitan versus small town, and it makes all of those simple sort of newspaper headline narratives way more complicated and like they are in real life. It makes them way more muddy and like
Hmm.
slippery. And you don't like, because at some points in that book I'm like, well, maybe the old guys have got a point because these kids are quite annoying. He doesn't Adam doesn't make it really sort of obvious or like really black and white. There's like, I just think, I think it's an astounding book for like a YA audience. I think it hopefully gets people really thinking. I think it's great. I loved it, and it is a lot of fun. And that scene at the party when all the clowns come out to play is like one of my favorite set pieces. It's so much fun.
It is fun. And I mean, you can tell Adam is a slasher fan, balancing the plot, balancing the fun,
Yeah,
balancing the kills, and you can tell he was a teacher. He
yeah,
worked with teens. Like, it
yeah,
does feel very
yeah.
authentic in that way. So yeah, this was a room temperature fridge for me,
Hmm.
but I had a lot of fun with it. So that
Yeah.
is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar.
Yeah, it's a good pick. I wish that had occurred to me actually, because that would have definitely made the list of mine. I never think about, because I suppose all slashes are small town, really, aren't they? If you think about it, because they don't really work in the city, so it's always like a small town, main street kind of place. But I somehow don't typically think of that when I think about small town horror.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's Scream 6, the New York one.
yeah, yeah. I did like that one. My next pick is a book that I apologize I read a while ago, and I may not have the greatest memory of its beat by beat events, but I know that I was really impressed by it, and that's Jackal by Erin E. Adams. Have you read this one?
Yes.
I
Oh,
assumed you would have done. Um, and I like this for a couple of reasons. So the premise is this a small town in Pennsylvania called Johnstown. It's in a sort of post-industrial malaise. It's the absolute essence of like the Rust Belt, and it's not dissimilar to Kettle Springs in a way. Industry has fled. This place is kind of
mm-hmm.
sinking. All the livelihood of the town relies on industry that's going away. And it's got that small town bigotry, and every year it's a very white town, and every few years, not every year, but every couple of years, a young black girl goes missing in the woods around the town and is often found dead with her chest often ripped open, and it's pretty grim. And the main character, Liz, who grew up in the town, is a black woman who returns home. She's got this great, New York life, but she comes home to this small town for her friend's wedding. And while she's there, her friend who's getting married, the daughter of the bride, goes missing. And the story is then a kind of two-layered thing where you have the present day search for this missing child and flashbacks to the disappearance of another girl when Liz was young, and the girl who went missing was the only other black girl in Liz's kind of peer group. So there's always this sense of like it could have been Liz, and then it's just kind of what's going on, and
Yeah.
But rather than it being a straightforward monster mystery, because it's this small town setting with a real socio-political texture to it, you also get the sort of crime noir thread to it. You get small town drama. You get a hint of a very strange folk horror, and the final reveal of what's happening is like, what, really? that is not what I expected. And I think, not to make things too political, but it very, very much speaks, this book, to this current moment politically. Weirdly, I think more in Britain than the US, because I think in the US,
Really?
divisions have got so overt and so bad over there now that weirdly Jackal speaks more to this still simmering British unrest. Because over here, yeah, we've had this big, like, far right rally last weekend where like 150,000 people turned out. But on the whole, tensions are still just simmering over here. And it's like I said about My Small Town, that kind of complacent bigotry that hasn't, it's a lot
Yeah.
of microaggressions, not quite come to the fore. And Erin's book feels like that. A lot of passag,
Yeah.
oh, I don't see colour type stuff.
Yeah.
Particularly in her best friend, who is one of those kind of people who says, oh, I don't see colour, but obviously her family are really involved in a lot of the racist history of the town. And when I read it, I felt like she was writing about my small town, even though hers is American. And I just think it's a really interesting kind of state of the moment book with this great monster mystery mixed in with it.
Yeah.
But that isn't a cozy small town horror like Ghost of Sleath
No.
is. Harvest Home is that cozy feeling. This feels like quite a gritty, uncomfortable place to be.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, and it's probably room temperature. It didn't really scare me at all. It's more of a book of ideas than a book of scares. But I enjoyed it a great deal.
Yeah. It's definitely one that stayed with me.
Mm,
My final pick is not very scary. It is The Night Country by Stewart Onan.
okay.
And this takes place on Halloween night. It is 1 year after a car accident that has killed 3 teens. And we are essentially in following the ghosts of these 3 teens as they are spending 24 hours walking through their, or not walking, floating through their small town and looking in on their families and the people that were affected by the accident. So this book is really sad and a bummer. It is like if Ray Bradbury wrote like the saddest story set on Halloween. Even the language used to describe, the mothers waking up early to go to the memorial site and place these mylar balloons,
Mm,
and the heartbreaking image that is, but also this idea that like this is the first anniversary. They'll eventually be forgotten.
yeah.
People move on. The parents will get to a point where they can't stand to live in this town anymore and they'll leave and this memorial will be forgotten. Like the whole book is like that. So it is just like a sad, melancholy book, but it is weirdly cozy in its autumnal prose, if that makes sense.
It does. I've never read Stewart Onan, but I always get the sense he's a bit like Bradbury. That it's that kind of
Yeah.
whimsical, romantic idea of American life. So I don't know why I've not read because that's exactly my jam.
This I feel like is the most of that. Like this book is dedicated to Ray Bradbury, but I could see that. I read Songs for the Missing, which was about a family grieving a missing girl, their missing daughter, and just like how you move on when you never get
Mm-hmm.
closure, when there's always that little bit of hope. And then one that I love, which is very slice of life, limited time span, is called Last Night at the Lobster. And it is about this red lobster uh, that is closing, and you are following the workers on their closing shift. There's a snowstorm outside, and just the little dramas of the
Oh,
staff with each other and the people coming in and just what happens. It's a small novella, just what happens at that Red
oh,
Lobster
I
during
love
this
stuff like
snowstorm.
that.
I
That
do
sounds
too.
just my kind of book. That those kind of books like do something to my heart. I love stories like that.
Okay, well, I recommend that one.
Okay, right, yeah, definitely.
This one, I I picked this up this morning to like look through. I was immediately sad. So I was like, oh yeah, this is
Okay.
sad. And one of the so it follows it was five teenagers in the car. Three of them died. One of them was left with permanent brain damage, and one of them survived at least physically intact, but has just obviously been haunted by being the only, person from this crash as a teenager, and his girlfriend was sitting on his lap. Yeah, it's a lot.
It sounds like one of those old rock and roll songs, about the guy on the motorbike who
Yeah.
dies, like leader of the pack type thing. God.
So I would say just know what you're getting into with this one
Yeah.
if you decide to pick it up. But it is about, how this town is dealing with this tragedy a year later, the way that their death looms over everything and touches everything.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Sorry.
I had my first pumpkin spice latte of the year today, so I'm in exactly this mood anyway. So put some
Okay.
Bon Iver on, read that book. That's me sorted for the next 3 months.
That is The Night Country by Stewart Onan.
Awesome.
I also wanted to mention Sam Rebelein's little
Hmm.
small town universe that he has going on. I still haven't read Galloway's Gospel.
Me either. Not yet.
Uh, but I did really enjoy The Poorly Made and Other Things. And with Edenville, I just think it's such. I love when authors do that. I love when Stephen King does that. I love
Mhm.
a contained fictional universe town.
Me too. Edenville was a little bit too wacky for me, but I'm really excited to read the Poorly Made because
Hmm.
I get the sense that I said this to Sam on the podcast, like he was trying to cram all his ideas into Edenville, and I'm glad that now he's got this broader canvas to expand on and kind of slow down and build the town at the pace he wants to build it. So I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
reading the short story collection because it feels like okay, we can we can take a breath, and we can really make this what we want to make it. So yeah, and I love anything where there's like links, and you can. It feels like it's fun for like the initiated reader. You can be like, oh, that's for me because I've read that thing, so I get the link. Yeah, I love stuff like that. I want to mention very briefly a book that hasn't come out yet, but everyone needs to get this on the pre-order list, and that is Itch by Gemma Amor. Now, full disclosure, Gemma's a good friend of mine, but I say this without any degree of kind of nepotism or anything at all because it's a great book. It's out the same day as Good Boy, and Gemma and I are doing our book launch together in Manchester. But Itch, talk about cramming things in. Um, it's about a woman who returns to her small town, but it's not fun. It's like a dreary place to be. She's fleeing like an abusive relationship. And she goes back to this small town, and there's a missing girl and a history of missing girls that has gone kind of sorry, not missing, murdered women that has kind of gone unnoticed. And she finds a body. And when she finds the body, it's covered in ants. And then the, I don't want to say too much, but she has a strange experience with the ants where they become like a possessing force over her. And it's simultaneously a 90s style serial killer thriller. It's got extreme body horror with the insects. That if you're not into insects, will be like it will literally make your skin crawl. The title Itch is a good one, and it's also got this phenomenal folk horror strand. And the way that the three things come together at the end, there's a revelation about what is happening and what's happening to the bodies and why these women have not been found that is so like horrible that it makes you kind of go oh and take a moment. um I don't say that to put people off. I mean, it's really clever and it's not gross, it's just clever. But what a book it is. I mean, Gemma's a phenomenal writer, and like she like you know if you like the dark side of English life and like real angry female characters, Gemma's your girl. And Itch is her first Big Five book, and I just really, really, really was impressed by it because it there's so much it shouldn't work in like 300 pages, but it does. Again, not a cozy small town though, not a place you want to kind of curl up and spend time.
No. I want to read this. I am very excited for it. It just seems like one of those books where like you read it and you just feel things crawling on you.
Yeah, you do, yeah. And for that reason, actually, it's not quite freezer for me, because I don't have any of the phobias this book is touching on. But I think a lot of people will find this a very, very uncomfortable book to read for different reasons, for many different reasons.
Already on the TBR. Very excited for it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Neil, as you know, we have a tradition on this show asking our guests for a chilling obsession. So, what have you been enjoying lately?
I have dived way back into the recesses of creepypasta, circa 2010. And the reason being, I'm currently reading Michael Wehunt. I don't know how to say his surname, and I'm interviewing him next week, so I'll have to ask him, but I think it's Michael Wehunt. He has a new book coming out called The October Film Haunt, which is all about this film where it's kind of a bit of a Paul Tremblay Head Full of Ghosts type thing, where this film existed and it's supposed to be cursed and it's supposed to be a portal to hell, and there's lots of blog entries and Wikipedia entries, and the monsters from the book appear to be emerging into the real world. And it's so skillfully done that at times reading it, I'm thinking, I've been Googling things to be like, is that real? Is that a real thing? Is like, am I in this story? It's like, it's really, really unnerving in how it blends reality and fiction. But it's all about the sort of Slender Man style phenomenon. You know, when I was finishing up my academic studies, my next project before I quit that entirely was going to be a study of creepypasta and what I had termed the viral tradition, not the oral, but the viral tradition. I was making the argument we'd gone back to that kind of campfire tradition, but we would just use the internet to do it, basically. And then I moved on, and then because of reading Michael's book, I've become wholly consumed once again by all the things that took over my life. So, Slender Man, you know, The Rake, which is potentially my favourite creepypasta, because the Rake has got the evidence. Listen, as if it's real, but the different entries go back to like the 16th century, and it's really fascinating how people retcon reality to make it fit a narrative, and they find things that were never about the Rake, but they've co-opted it and made it part of this narrative. And I'm just fascinated by that kind of communal viral storytelling, and I'm really interested in what's going to happen next with TikTok, because that's not for me, right? I'm not down with the kids, so probably right now there's a really cool new version of creepypasta on TikTok that I'm not willing to tussle with. But I just find it all so fascinating.
It's something we're always going to do. We're always going to be telling horror stories.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ethics of it is interesting, right? Because with the Slender Man killing thing, and Michael's book plays on this idea that, like, it's in some way irresponsible to write these things and pretend they're real, because vulnerable people may misconstrue it or take it too far. And like, that's a whole other ethic. I mean, I particularly think, like, you can't not write something because someone may abuse it. You can't do that. But it is an interesting idea that, like, if kids are getting hold of this stuff through the internet, do we have to be concerned about what we're putting out on the internet? And is it the same as when we used to write books and say, well, kids won't read this? Is it, you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff to consider. So it's got me thinking maybe one day I may go back and write the book I always intended to write 10 years ago when I left academia, but probably not.
So like a nonfiction.
Yeah, I probably won't do it. I have these ideas, and then I quickly go like, yeah, I never ever want to use a footnote ever again. So, but I just find the creepypasta thing still just so rich and fascinating.
It is. I was not in those trenches, but I feel like I saw whatever seeped out into whatever was big enough to seep out into the main culture. And I know, like, my son knew about Siren Head, like Trevor Henderson's.
Yeah. Trevor's a character in Michael's book.
Interesting.
That's how meta it gets.
That is interesting. Okay. It's on my nightstand right now.
Oh, it's really good. But it is, I was reading it at night and I was like, I'm not very happy reading this. And if I could make a recommendation for something for your listeners to go away and check out, I think the greatest creepypasta ever made It's actually a Reddit thing. It's on the Reddit No Sleep forum, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever read, right, in any medium. And it's called this is the full title of it. I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service. I have some stories to tell. And it was published 10 years ago. And it's like, there's like 8 installments of it. It's probably, by the time you're done with it, it's probably like, I don't know, 40,000 words. It's a lot of stuff. And it's put across as this forest ranger officer just posting the weird things that they encounter. But then when people write back, they start to respond to it and incorporate it. And it grows. And it's one of the best pieces of like lore building you'll ever read. So people go and read it. It's still all there on Reddit. It's so good.
Is this the one with the staircase in the woods?
That's yeah.
That's one of them. That's one of
Yeah.
the.
And there's lots more, but
Okay.
that's one of the main things. Yeah, so good.
Did you ever watch Channel Zero? I know
You
that
know
was
what?
very inspired by creepypastas.
I haven't, which is ridiculous. And the reason I haven't is I got so burned out on my attempt to try and write this book about creepypasta that when that came out, I was like, oh, I'm over all this. I'm over this
Yeah.
stuff. But I should watch like the Tooth Man stuff, right? And I really should watch it because I've heard it's great.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, the first one, Candle Cove, is, and I feel like this was a creepypasta,
Yeah, it
right?
was.
This
Yeah,
idea that like there's a show that we all remember,
yeah,
but that never aired. We cannot find
hmm
uh, any proof that it was ever a real kids show. And so, like, what were we all watching?
yeah.
I think my favorite season is the second one, the No End House. That
That's a great creepypasta. I mean, these the greats like
Yeah,
Candle Cove, No End House, like Jeff the Killer, Slender Man, Russian Sleep Experiment. These are like the daddies, of the
yeah,
genre. But no, I should go and watch it. I've never seen it.
yeah. You'll have to report back.
Mm.
All right. Well, time for the second tradition of the podcast, which is, as you know, Neil, you got to tell us your final girl song.
Well, I thought hard about this, right? And I thought I need something that's got to do with a small town. And my original pick was going to be Hazard by Richard Marx, like 80s, like soft rock ballad about a guy who's clearly killed his girlfriend. And I was like, no, it's too lame. So my final girl song is by Nick Cave, and it's The Curse of Millhaven. Have you ever heard this?
Now, is this like a murder ballad?
It's on Murder Ballads, and it's based, the town of Millhaven is borrowed from Peter Straub, because that's
Oh,
Straub's town in the Blue Rose trilogy in Milwaukee.
interesting.
But The Curse of Millhaven is this really funny song about this town in which this young teenage girl called Loretta, who's 15, has been secretly just killing everyone on the quiet. And she gets caught, but it goes through, it's quite a long song, and it goes through like verse by verse with her different murders. And it ends with like, we've all got to die, and this mad cackle. And it's things like where is it? What's the yeah, like you must have heard about the curse of Millhaven. How last Christmas Bill Blake's little boy didn't come home. They found him the next week up in 1 Mile Creek with his head bashed in and his pockets full of stones. And it's just stuff like that. So, in honor of small town horror,
Yeah,
the curse of Millhaven. That's my final girl song.
perfect. I am going to go listen to it as soon as
Mm-hmm.
we get
Yeah.
off this call. That sounds great. All right. Well, do you have any, tell our listeners about anything else you have coming out or working on?
Yes, so
You
I've got
can.
obviously Good Boys out October 9th. So when's this going live, Stephanie?
Mid October, I
Okay.
think.
So Good Boys coming out in October 9th. In October 24th, I'll be at the Powerhouse of Horror Arena Party in Brooklyn with like it's come along and you can pick a book that you get as part of your ticket, and I'm gonna be there. CJ Lead, Rachel Harrison, Nat Casti, Clay McLeod Chapman, Cassandra Court, Emily Hughes, all friends of this community. Other people, Sam Rebelein's going to be there. The show's going on as ever. Joe Hill's coming on the show. That's going to be fun. I'm talking Scared, and then I'm taking a break from October to Christmas, and I've got short story coming out soon and you know, I could talk to you about this. I've got a story coming out in the Taylor Swift horror anthology, coming out from Sabelo
Yeah.
Books, of which I believe you wrote the foreword. Is that something I can say?
Yeah, I did. I wrote the introduction.
Yeah, there you go. Because you're a much bigger Swifter than me. But my story is based upon the song Cardigan.
Oh,
Um,
which is my favorite.
my favorite too, and it's, let's just say it's not about a cardigan, but the line "when you are young, they assume you know nothing"
Oh,
has a chilling
okay.
connotation to me. So that's coming out in November, I believe. And beyond that, I'm just working on the next book. So yeah,
Ooh. Well, we are excited for whatever that will be.
it's going to be nasty.
We always love that.
Yeah,
All right. Well, Neil, thank you so much for coming on here and chatting with me about Good Boy and small town horror.
always a pleasure. I enjoyed it a lot.
Books in the Freezer is a bi weekly podcast. We post episodes every other Tuesday, except in October, where we get new episodes every week. Show notes for this episode will be listed in the podcast description with links for where to find the books that we've mentioned. Those are affiliate links for bookshop.org, so you can support an independent bookstore and the podcast when you purchase one of the books. If you are looking for other ways to support the podcast, consider joining our Patreon community at patreon.com/booksinthefreezer, where you will get access to early episode releases where you can listen ad-free 2 days before everyone else. And at the Malevolent Spirit tier, you have access to the new House at the End of Fear Street series, where we are reading all of the books in R.L. Stine's Fear Street series. It has been a fun journey. I believe there are 10 episodes out so far, and I am recording more. There is more coming. I'm very excited about this, and it's been a lot of fun. I have been your host, Stephanie Gagne. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time on Books in the Freezer.